I get this question every single time we did this. Is Helm popular? So let's go ahead and get started. This is Helm for you. My name is Andy Blanc. I'm a distinguished architect at Red Hat and a Helm maintainer.
Hi, I'm Matt Farina. I'm a distinguished engineer over at SUSE and a Helm maintainer.
And today we're going to talk about Helm 4. And by judging by just the audience, I think this is a somewhat popular session, especially the end of the day, on the second to last day. So we're going to talk about Helm 4 and how we got here and where we're going. So first of all, Helm has been here for a while. You know, we look at the keynotes today and yesterday. We talked about Kubernetes and the CNCF, 10 years old. Well, Helm's been around for quite some time before it, which is just scary when you think about how long Helm has been here. So Helm's been here for a while. Now, there have been a lot of frameworks that have come and gone, been trying to replicate Helm. You know, I can think of probably about 4 or 5 in the last couple of years saying they're better than Helm, we're going to take it on. But Helm's really always been there as your trusted tool for how you manage Kubernetes. However, even though we've been around for a while, it doesn't really mean that we've always been perfect. There's a lot of issues, a lot of pull requests. So even with all of that going on, we know that there has to be change. Think about it. It's been 5 years, over 5 years, since Helm version 3 came out. We had this exact same talk back in Salt Lake City, and I think it was 5 years to the day when we actually had that talk. So it's been about 5 and maybe 5.5 years. It's time for an update. A lot has changed in 5 years. Who would have thought that last time Helm came out, a pandemic hadn't happened yet? And here we are. Since then, new projects have created, new frameworks, new patterns, new versions of Go, for goodness sakes. And because of Helm and how, and a lot of the primitives that our project lives behind, we couldn't make any changes. Matt's going to talk about some of those in a minute. So we really use this opportunity to talk about and use this as a way to say, okay, let's go ahead and move on. So what is the Helm 4 timeline? So Helm 4, we started development back just around Kubernetes, KubeCon back in Salt Lake City in November. Well, we're here now in March in KubeCon EU. We have a switch coming up in August where we're going to start switching the feature work to stability work. So we have, we've been working on Helm 4 for a little bit. We're getting very close to making that switch and starting to make it so we're actually going to go to Helm 4. And then finally, we're going to try releasing. We're planning on releasing Helm 4 as part of KubeCon in Atlanta. We're going to go for gold in Atlanta. And I'll go from one gold medal city to another. So kind of a nice little analogy there. So we've done a lot actually thus far. What have we done, Matt?
Clicker, thank you. So some of the stuff that we've done, let's dive right in. This is the work since, he talked about the kickoff back in November, and we're here. So this is what's happened so far. The first thing we've done is we made breaking changes. This is big. Helm version 3, we didn't break anything. And this flag here is a beautiful example of us not breaking things. When Helm 3 first came out, if you did Helm repo list, and there was an error updating a repository, the exit code was 0. Oops, it should have given an error, should have reported something, right? But we didn't want to break anything because so many people use it in critical places that we added a flag for that. If you wanted it to return an error code instead of 0, oops, we added a flag for that because stability and not breaking people was just so vitally important to us. And so now we're breaking things, and it's things like this that we're breaking, right? We pulled this flag out, it returns a non-zero exit code just like it should have. But there's lots of other things that we are breaking along the way to try to improve your experience as a Helm user using the client, the CLI, or as an SDK user who's got to incorporate it into your tooling because we've learned so much in the last 5 years. The command part is now a package. This is a subtle little interesting one. So if you go look at tools, like if I pick up K3S, for example, another CNCF project, you'll see that K3S has kubectl commands built right into it, right? I can run K3S, kubectl, and a kubectl command. It's a way of packaging things up. Well, Helm was not architected internally in a way that somebody could do this with Helm's code. I actually ran into this with a project that I wrote a few years ago. We wanted to make that change, and we weren't the only ones, because somebody else wanted to embed Helm commands in their application too. And so they came along, and now the Helm commands are a sub-package. So another application, another Go application, can import those and use those commands directly, the same way that something like K3S does kubectl. Oh, this is a fun one. So talk about not breaking compatibility here, right? We removed support for old Kubernetes APIs. Let me ask this, is anybody still out there running Kubernetes 1.15? No? No? Helm 3 still supports its APIs that have been deprecated, beta APIs.
Nobody's ready to admit it.
Yeah, nobody's going to admit this. We have support for beta APIs that go back that far that Kubernetes hasn't served in years, because we didn't want to break anything or anybody. Now, hopefully nobody is running a version that old because of security, but we didn't break things. And so we've removed support for those older APIs, so we're going to support modern Kubernetes and not have to carry that legacy around with us anymore. Let's see.
Auras, that's mine.
This is yours.
So how many know what Auras is? How many store their charts as OCI artifacts? Auras is the library underneath that, and we were the last project that used the V1 of Auras, and they basically created this branch and kept the branch alive because of Helm, and because of our API compatibility, we couldn't change that. And we've had so many users that have had some challenges around OCI registries, OCI artifacts, and we're like, we can't do too much just because of the way that Auras V1 was created and maintained. They've moved on to V2 before we even went GA out of experimental phase. So we're using this as an opportunity to finally go ahead and switch over to Auras V2. Has a lot more improvements, and we can actually go ahead and track all the features that Auras is including and integrating into their own project now into Helm.
Yes, and this all comes down to not just compatibility for CLI users, but SDK users. If we'd upgraded Auras V1 the way things came out, it would have actually could have broken the experience for those SDK users. The things like the Flux project and others out there who take that. What is this? We removed unused functions. So you'd be surprised, code morphing over time, we had public APIs in there. Lots and lots of public APIs that it turns out other projects were still using, even when Helm decided to stop using it. And we couldn't remove those for a long time. We had to maintain them, made sure they work. We jumped through some hoops to keep those things alive. We started ripping them out. There are newer ways to do those same things, but in a minor version of something semantically versioned, you don't break that. And you see a lot of this out of us, right? We don't want to break things. It's because we know there's so many important things built on it. We really want to take versioning responsibly. We don't want to break people along the way unless we signal that, which is what a major version is for. So we've started to change those things. Now these updates will be documented, so when you finally need to move from version 3 to version 4, if you're an SDK user, there will be a migration guide. There will be something to say, hey, you were doing this, now you can do this instead. But it is one of those things, we are breaking those APIs now for our health and hopefully yours as well. All right, so let's talk about what we're actively working on, because that's what we did already. So this stuff's already done, this is baked, it's built in. Now this is the stuff that's in flight right now that maintainers like us are currently working on, and we're actually open to help on this too. So the first thing is logging. All right. So Go logging, if you went back 5 years ago, it was a little bit of a mess. You didn't have things like the slog package in Go. Many of the logging libraries that we use today, we take for granted. And so Helm had a really funny way of doing logging. In fact, if you look at some of the old logging examples here, you're going to see we used either the log package, or we also passed a logger around internally, which was a funny little wrapper that we'd created. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't nice, And if you're going to use it as an SDK or other things, there's far better ways to do it. So things didn't cleanly integrate, and they didn't cleanly work well if you want to pull stuff in. And as working for a company where we pull in the Helm SDK, it was kind of a problem to make sure the output went to the same place as everything else, which helps with debugging. So we looked at a lot of different ways of doing logging, right? Because it's still a little bit controversial on what you should do. We looked at different loggers. Do we want to do things the Kubernetes way, right? Kubernetes use klog. There's also logr, which I'm probably pronouncing logr wrong. There may be a better way of saying it, but that's the API for it. And this is based on what came out of Google and you see in lots of the operators. But we went out and we did research and we said, all right, how are people using the Helm SDK? We can go around on GitHub and see how it's imported and where it's used. What kind of logging do these applications all use? And we found it was all over the place. It didn't just follow what Kubernetes does. A lot of times they'll use the log package. We found plenty using Logros, right? We found some using Zap and others. And we said, all right, what logging interface, what way of doing it will work for all of them? And we had to ask that question and do the research. So we decided on the new slog package. This is compatible with klog and what Kubernetes does. They have a compatibility layer in, so things that use that will work. There's shims for things like Logros and Zap and some of these others. And this is a good way to do structured logging and that kind of thing. So Helm is in the process right now of migrating all of its logging over to this in a way that SDK users can take advantage of, and CLI users will get a richer experience in their output. So here's a really simple new logging experience. What you're going to see is we're actually along the way switching to structured logging. So a lot of our logging had messages and information intermixed. We're now actually trying to do structured logging. So when an SDK user pipes this to output, they can query on this. They can say, what are the errors? What are the other messages? It gives people using it in the rich logging tools the ability to query and do more relevant things. What we have not worked out, this is one. So while that's an SDK, while that provides a nice API, which logger are we ultimately going to use in the end? Do we want to use something that gives us pretty output in the client? Do we just want to go with the base system? Do we want something that's high-end performance? This is an open question. And so actually, if anybody here has an opinion on it, please come find us offline, outside of the conference. Let us know what you think. But this is one of those questions we're still trying to work out what's going to be the default one that the Helm CLI uses. Because this, again, is one of those things that's in flight. So let's talk about charts v3. All right. So over the last few years, we've gotten a lot of questions. Can we do this differently with charts? Can we do that differently with charts? And a lot of the ideas are great, beautiful ideas, ways to extend charts. But if you do it, it breaks things for people in their experience. And as you see, we're big on not breaking things. So we introduced the idea of coming up with a charts API version v3. And if you haven't noticed, the charts today are API version v1 or v2. And we had API version v1 a long time ago. Helm still supports those, mostly. There's a few features nobody ever used that aren't supported, but we support that. And we said if we want to do some of this without breaking all those charts out there that you create and consume, we need to increment the API version. So that is going into an experimental phase. Now let me explain this here. One of the things, the big reason for this is we didn't want to break backwards compatibility, right? We definitely don't want to break you or any of your charts. When we went from v1 to v2, we broke a few things. We were lucky that along the way we patched them and fixed them, but some of the changes were going to be bigger. And I had people say, with Helm v4, if you break my charts, I will find you and kill you.
I think the number of users were a little smaller back then anyways, the user base.
It was a lot smaller back then. But I've had people who know where I live say, I will hunt you down and kill you. And they're normally people who say, come to the conference, I'll buy you a beer. And so it was a very different tone. So here's a little bit about charts history, right? Charts v1 came out with Helm v1. And then we went to charts v2. And charts v2 was part of Helm v3. And we had charts v1 for a long time. There was a small period where it was kind of unstructured, but almost nobody used Helm back then. You remember, this is 2016. That's a long time ago at this point. And we've had charts v2 for a very, very, very long time. So here's what we're talking about with this. And this is where things get a little bit different from the Helm version 4 timeframe. It's an experiment, which means we can break out of the Helm version 4 date at the end of the year because we looked at all the changes people wanted to have and we can't fit them all in. So we want to play with it for a while. Let you experiment with charts as we iterate and get feedback and work on it. So we're going to continue to support charts v2 through Helm v4 and maybe beyond. We don't know. We don't know when that life cycle will end. But charts v3 is going to be an experiment. It'll be an experiment once we get it in here during the development phase, and it'll be an experiment after the release of Helm version 4, so we can iterate on it. We can learn, we can change, you can give us feedback. And then when it's ready, we'll make it GA, remove the experiment flag, and those charts can be live in the wild for people to use for those new features. This meant that the constraint of trying to get a Helm version 4 out at the end of the year in a reasonable time doesn't constrain being creative here. And so this is one of those things that we're working on. Now, what might be in charts v3, right? Pluggable rendering engines. We've got some people in the room who wanted to change out the rendering engine and get rid of GoTPL. This is one of the things we're talking about. Can you make it pluggable and embed that in the chart? Another form of dependency handling, right? Right now, you've got charts in the chart subdirectory, and you can do Helm dependency up. There may be other ways we want to do it, and there are people who've been experimenting with ideas on this. And so we're looking at that. A different way of handling CRDs, right? The way we handle CRDs now has some rough edges, and it was there to play very, very safe. But now CRDs have taken on a life of their own since this came out. They've expanded far more in use and in use case. So we're looking for different ways to handle CRDs. Custom resource ordering, right? Helm, Kubernetes, you should be able to just throw everything up and everything reconciles beautifully. In reality, that doesn't always work. And Helm, in order to solve for that, has an internal resource ordering from lessons learned. Sometimes you want to deal with your CRDs within that resource ordering. Or maybe you want to change that resource ordering because your own application wants to do something. So this is a feature we're talking about. Or maybe there's just something else that we're not even thinking of. Or that we've got a list that goes beyond this. But these are all kinds of things we can look to play with a new version of charts we can't do without breaking people in the existing ones. All right. And
Editor status checking. So how many of you have gone ahead and had some challenges waiting for certain actions to finish? Yeah, way Helm has done it in version 3, not the best. So like anything, any improvement we have to Helm, we have a Helm improvement proposal, a HIP basically. And we have special ones for Helm 4. So very much like any improvement, we have one for let's get a better handling for statuses. So right now, this is the current logic. It's very opinionated, it's kind of generic, it's very custom to Helm, which worked for a while, but then, like Matt said, with many things we've seen thus far, there's some rough edges. So what we did is we went to the community and saw what's out there. And we have plenty of contacts and many different tools leverage Helm. And one of them is Flux. So we were able to work with members of that team to bring in case status. Case status is a more intelligent way of handling waits and checking on the current status of resources. This got merged literally last week. And we're, maybe this week. It was a couple days ago.
It's not merged yet. It's approved, but not merged.
Close, we're close. Open source at its finest. Anyways, very close to being merged, and this is gonna provide a much better experience for you to be able to understand what the current status of all the resources we have currently being deployed as part of a chart release. And we have a lot of things we're considering. Matt?
So, actually, the first one's yours.
Oh, it's all mine now. Okay, so going back to the topic of OCI registries, how many of you have had some challenges in the transition from typical Helm repositories to OCI registries for releases? There's not a good way to reference other repositories. Proxy and mirroring is not the best. So we evaluated several different options out there. We could have gone and kind of rolled our own, but we looked into what does the experience look like for anyone creating an OCI artifact? Well, it's going to be a similar experience to creating a container image. So we looked into what provides a similar experience of creating a container image and managing container images. So if you're familiar with the ecosystem out there, there's a concept called registries.conf, and that allows you to customize how aliases work, mirrors, as well as other configurations and credential helpers too. And you can do all this using standardized approaches that are already out there in the ecosystem. So it's not just Helm doing this, we're going ahead and following and partnering with what other communities are doing. And I do a lot of work with a lot of different container engines, and they were very interested in hearing about that Helm was considering this, and they want to get our feedback, what's working well, what's not working well, and if we hit an issue, an edge case, we're going to bring that back to them and be able to help really make the whole ecosystem much better. Plugins.
Yes. So one of the things that we're looking at is improving how plugins work. Helm has certain plugins you can do. Things like a downloader plugin or an extension at the command line where information about what's going on is then passed to your plugin. We are looking at other ways that we can do plugins to make Helm more extensible. Because we get lots of questions about, hey, could we do this feature or that feature or this other feature? And a lot of times they're niche cases, or it's not something that we need to maintain for everybody. Or maybe it brings in a pattern that it's a lot to maintain because there's so many of you with so many different ideas. And we wanted the ability to give you the extensibility to plug into different places along the process. So we are looking at how do we do this. We haven't worked out the details yet or the time frames for which parts, because we've got everything from small ideas we can meet for Helm 4 to grand ideas we need to experiment with, which already has us talking. A few years of experimenting with some of these ideas may lead us into some changes to a Helm version 5 that can do even more extensibility. But this is one of those areas that we're working on right now.
Security is a big one, and I do a lot with security. And how many of you sign your Helm charts? Why don't you sign your Helm charts? Because it's hard. PGP, GPG is not easy, and it's cumbersome. So there are other tools out there that have evolved over the last few years. One of them is Cosign and Sigstore. So looking at providing new opportunities to sign your charts outside of GPG and PGP. So this is one of the areas where we're looking at extending this through plugins.
Yes, and actually there is a plugin to do cosign signing today, but that functionality isn't native, and that's one of those things that's interesting.
That was mine. I care so much about this ecosystem. We want to at least get some type of bridge for the Helm 3 world. We're going to make it a little more native in Helm 4.
All right, so we've talked about a bunch of things. What we've done, what we're currently working on, what we're looking at doing. But I know, especially from talking to many people this week, there's a lot of things that we have up here that other people, we're missing things. And we won't be able to get everything done that you all would like to see. We're not going to get everything done we would like to get done in a Helm version 4 for changes because we're limiting some of that time. But there are things out there, and there may be something you really want to see, maybe even something you want to contribute yourself. We do want to hear about it. So let's talk, because while this is what we have right now and what we're looking at, and we have a schedule, we're still open to other things, and we're open to other people contributing ideas to fit within that. So if you have something...
Matt, yesterday at the booth, we had $1 million idea come in. And we're at the booth all today, we're probably done for the day, but tomorrow we're there from, I think, 3 to 4:30, or it's later in the day. No, it's 12 to 2. That's what it is. It's in the afternoon, early afternoon. Come by. We want to talk to you. We want to hear about your use cases. If you have $1 million idea that you think is to be the next big thing, we would love to hear about it. Because we can think about a lot of things, but you guys work with Helm on a daily basis in your organization, in your personal time. You've hit rough spots. You've had ideas. We want to hear about it. So how can you get involved, aside from obviously coming down to the booth and talking to us here in the session? First of all, we're on Slack. We're on Kubernetes Slack. So we have 2 primary channels, the Helm users, which is where all the Helm users end up mingling and talking about how they use Helm. But there's an entire channel just for development called Helm Dev. If you're interested in contributing to the project, go there. Number 2, if you want to just get your hands dirty, go ahead and help us out in the Helm organization. We have several different projects outside of just Helm. We have plugins that we integrate. We have CI tools. Anything that you want to do and you think is going to be helpful for the project, we want to get that information from us. But in addition to that, you don't have to be a coder. If you want to help with docs, docs would be the greatest way that we would love you. We would go ahead and give you Starbucks or whatever you like, because finding time for the maintainers to do docs is painful because we need to get features out there, but docs help the user experience. And then finally, if you want to collaborate with the community, please come to our weekly meetings on Thursdays at 12:30 Eastern for us to be able to talk and collaborate with the community. That's it. A lot coming up in Helm 4. We're excited to be able to bring that and work with you to make it happen. So thank you very much.
If you have questions, there is a microphone over here. Could you please come over to the microphone? And the reason for that is, as people do make their way over to it, is they like to have this recorded because this goes online, and the questions being out there, that works really well. And so if people could line up over here, we would appreciate it. So, you're up.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Can you hear me? Yep.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'm Johan from Finland and been using Helm quite a lot for a few years now. So 2 questions or 2 feature requests. Be possible to add YAML schemas to library charts? That would be superb.
YAML schema to library charts.
Yes.
YAML schemas to schemas to library charts.
Yes. And the second one, to make it easy to produce reproducible Helm charts to when you package them so that the timestamps are all the same and so forth.
Yes, and so the reproducible Helm charts, the reason we didn't do it was a backwards breaking change. So it is one of those things we can look at now. And schemas for library charts, yes, thank you.
Hi, I want to know if post renderers are working on Helm hooks in Helm 4.
Not yet.
Is it planned?
Would you like to come help us with that?
Is it planned?
Is it planned to make it? I want to say there is somebody who's been bringing it up. It's somewhere in there. I don't know the state of it, but it is one of those things. There was either a pull request or an issue for it. It is being discussed. I don't know the state of it, though.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
So once we've got Helm 4, how quickly is Helm 3 going to be retired?
So the current plan, I want to say, is...
Was it 6 months?
8 months.
Yeah.
I want to say it is 2 minor versions, which minor version comes out every 4 months, and it's roughly a month delayed from the Kubernetes minor, so we can update each time. We wanted to do, I think, 2 minors, so I think it was 6 or 8 months is the way it ends up working out, is the timetable. So it won't be delayed right away. We'll still be supporting it for bugs and security and upgrading the Kubernetes libraries for support. For a little while to give people an opportunity to switch over.
Thank you.
Hi there, got 2 questions. So question number 1 is if you can elaborate a little bit on CRDs, like, you know, what are the actual problems with CRDs in Helm, and, why they are a problem, and what can you do better in Helm 4 to make it less of a problem?
So we've got a whole Helm improvement proposal that's informational on this one, and I want to say it prints out to be pages long, and it deals with things like, with a Helm chart, you can have 2 people install a Helm chart in different namespaces who don't know about each other, right? And so if it installs CRDs, there's an opportunity for them to collide at a global resource, and one installing something could break the other. Like somebody did a rollback to an older version and somebody depended on something in the newer version of the CRD. Oops, they broke somebody's application.
It can be the same version of the CRD or a totally different CRD version.
And so there's opportunities to break things. So we've always been very conservative with CRDs because we don't want to break your cluster. And that's one of the problems. We actually have a document in the Helm improvement proposals that outlines all of those problems. So if you want to learn what the problems are to help us come up with solutions, it's well written out.
Thank you. So the other question was about, there are now a lot of tools coming up like this programmatic, templating tools like CDK, where you actually write your object as a, proper objects, like in the programming language paradigm, like, dictionaries or, whatever you want to call them, so that you can have a proper typed API and stuff like that. Do you see like Helm supporting that kind of paradigm anytime soon, or is it just like out of scope, or?
Yeah, so when we talked about the pluggable rendering systems, this is where that would fall into, because you could have something like that and then have a system know what to do to then turn it into the valid Kubernetes objects that get sent over. that's exactly where that falls in. And it's the types of things like that do it. In fact, Inge's up here, he's working with us, and he's talked about these kinds of things to bring in YAML script to do some stuff.
He's Mr. YAML.
Yeah, Mr. YAML. So it's one of those things, yeah. So it's one of those things we are definitely thinking about it, and that gives into the pluggable rendering system.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I have two questions. The first one, you just mentioned that Helm 4 will support cosine. But what about the integrated sine subcommand in the Helm command? Right, and it's a well-known issue that Helm is using a legacy Go crypto library, and it cannot support EDDSA.
Yes. So in Helm 4, I want to fix that even for PGP.
Yeah, me too.
Because we'll do that. I already have a plan for fixing that in PGP with Helm 4. I would like to get rid of that old crypto library and replace it. We got a plan for it, but it would have broken APIs to do it. So it is a Helm 4 thing. It's on my mind. I should have put it up there, but it is on my mind.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. And the second question is that in the legacy chart museum version of the charts repository, we have index.yaml to list all the charts in the repository.
Yeah.
And what about the OCI version of it?
The challenge is more about right now, there's no real support inside OCI. So it's really hard just to be able to list registry tags. I mean, you can list tags, but in terms of listing related images, that's challenging. It's been one we've been thinking about, but we got to work with the community to actually provide a solution.
So is it on the roadmap, or when will we support it?
Well, that's going to be something that we need to work with the OCI community.
Yeah, so we in the past have worked with the OCI community on this when we worked with them on artifacts, and we didn't come up with a good solution then. We need to go back and work with them again because they had ideas for it, but the collaboration stopped. So we don't have something like that.
There's extensions to registries, but it's not standardized. So that's where the challenge is going to be. It might work on some registries, but not all registries.
Yeah. So we spent time on this problem. We haven't come to a good solution yet, which is why we don't have something for it.
Thanks.
Yep.
You're welcome.
So Aviad, 27, thank you so much for this great session. I want to thank you for a small nice feature in Helm 3.15, the hide secret flag in Helm template. Caused us so many headaches, rotating secrets in the CI were outputting the template basically. I also contributed the documentation because I got my hands dirty seeing that this is supported, but the docs doesn't mention it. I wanted to ask a question about pending upgrade and pending install. What's the thing with the breaking changes where if a release is already in pending upgrade or install, you need to visit it, like do a rollback, a manually rollback? Why not just redeploy like it was before? It was kind of a breaking change in a 3.15, something like that.
Do we have an issue on that? Is there an issue?
Not an issue, just the fact that it was kind of a breaking change where, for example, I give you a developer was deploying, canceling the pipeline in the middle, the release is on pending upgrade or pending install, and then a redeploy won't work.
I guess the question is, was it a known feature that was changed, and that's the new functionality, and it's causing challenges now?
This sounds like a bug.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there. I don't remember at this point. Please file an issue and raise it to our attention. This sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't remember what's going on there. I wish I could answer it on the spot, but I don't.
Thank you.
Please file an issue.
Thank you so much. Hopefully in Helm 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Very nice talk. We are working with air-gap environment, and I was wondering if there's a plan to be able to override the chart registry.
So that's where the registry's conf that we mentioned is meant to solve that challenge.
We have an issue, and is Andrew Block around to talk?
That's him.
That's me. Hi.
Yes, find him afterwards.
Yes.
Plug him, please.
Yep.
Hey, so I was wondering what's the intended scope of the plugin system? So, for example, would you be able to write custom filter plugins, like Go template filters, for example?
We're still working that out. It'll probably be minimal when Helm version 4 comes out. Looking for a pattern that we can do, that in minor releases we can expand on it. but that's some of the stuff we're still working out. We want to do better plugins. We've even been talking about WebAssembly for those plugins, so you can write plugins in different languages and execute them on different architectures and OS to make that easier. We've got ideas there, so we haven't worked it out yet.
Hi. I wanted to ask if there's any plan to support the templating of dependency charts. Like if I have a dependency on some chart, how I can template the values of it and
you
maybe
can't
deploy
template
it multiple
values.
times.
So are you talking about templating the values, or?
Yeah, like I have, like an example, I know the OAuth2 proxy from Bitnami, the chart, and I want to insert the ingress, the host name, and I have to use it in multiple places. And now the user would have to, or now the user would have.
So you can use the TPL function and do that. Use the TPL function, you can go ahead and basically it renders at runtime.
Yeah, with the TPL function, it's the problem that every chart has to implement that.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely, yes. So every chart that uses it would have to implement that TPL function. That's what you can do today. We have not talked about doing anything around templating the values that get passed to subcharts. That's an interesting idea. Please raise the issue, and we could look at the positives, negatives, feasibility of it. I actually hadn't thought of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm excited about the rendering system, and I was asking if you have any idea how long you want to have the chart version 3 in experimental mode before it becomes stable.
We really don't. If we've learned anything, the timetables that we think may not happen.
They're ambitious.
Yeah, we have ambitious timetables, so I really don't want to share, but we'll do it when it's ready, when we've got a good enough feature set, and we know we won't meet everybody's needs, and people have tested it enough. We know the system's robust.
We're purposefully making it ambitious just to keep ourselves accountable. It's been a long time. If we didn't do this, it would continue to prolong itself, and we'd never get anything done.
And one of the nice things about doing it as an experiment is then we know Helm 4 isn't going to go on for an unknown amount of time while we wait on a particular feature.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. If you have any other questions.
We're here.
Yep, we're here. Grab us outside. Thank you very much.